Good evening. I would like to call our regular meeting of the South Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission for Tuesday, January 6, 2026 to order.
It's actually a special meeting, not a regular meeting.
I'd like to revise that to a special meeting, but I still want to ask you to silence your cell phones, and we will still do a Pledge of Allegiance to start. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Josh, can I do housekeeping?
I'm sorry?
Can I do housekeeping?
Go ahead.
I would like to welcome back Bob Vittier, who was rejoining us as an alternate commissioner, so glad to have you back, Bob. So tonight is a special meeting. We have Dr. Carter, our superintendent of schools, here for some discussion. I appreciate your joining us. Before I turn it over to you, I would like to do some level setting to get everyone on the same page regarding the purpose of the evening. So for the past half dozen years or so, we've had information presented to us relative to student population challenges across our schools. As a result, this commission has pushed back, sometimes hard, on development that might exacerbate our student roles. What we're hoping to understand tonight is where we are currently and, more importantly, what you and the demographers see going forward. As you likely know, we are in receipt of the most recent enrollment projections, a November 2025 document that we received. We're aware that you're not presenting that tonight. You are presenting something that you left for us, and we appreciate that. We look forward to that. For our commissioners, if you would like a deeper dive into the data after this evening, the data that is in the document that we did receive, we can organize a meeting with the demographers who crafted that study. Before we get started, I would like to offer a few thoughts. Given the importance of both the housing issue and student population issue, there is a symbiotic relationship here. It would benefit all of us if we could set up regular updates like this evening, at least annually, if not more often. Possibly you could work with Michelle to set that up and get it calendarized. I have found these discussions with you especially helpful and useful. Secondly, while there has been some criticism of the accuracy of previous school enrollment studies, it seems to me that it's the best data we have. And I'm hopeful that going forward we will have greater comfort in the data when viewed historically. Finally, and this is my opinion, it seems to me that restricting development due to concerns about school population is a paradigm that is not sustainable. The lifeblood of any town is vibrant growth, preferably from younger families who come here to work, play, go to school, pay taxes, and create a better community. With that, I turn it over to you, Dr. Carter.
Great, thank you. Well, good evening, Chairman Bernstein and Vice Chairman Foley and Commission members. I'm here to provide, as you just heard, a brief update on school enrollment. While it's not a formal presentation, there is a hard copy in front of you this evening that I'll be referencing or that you can reference with questions. In your packets is the refreshed enrollment data, district-wide and by grade level. Our current PK through 12 enrollment as of October 1st is 5,156 students. You will see that we have plateaued at the elementary level and remain stable until the year 2035. At TE, we have already increased by 337 students since 2017 and will increase by another 142 students when TE peaks in 2029. The high school has increased by 233 students since 2018 and will grow by an additional 351 students by 2033. Page 6 in your packet provides an eye-opening comparison of enrollment across DIRG-B districts. Between 2015 and 2024, 15 of the 21 Derby districts declined in enrollment with an average decrease of 372 students. Only 5 other Derby districts increased in enrollment with an average increase of 159 students in comparison to South Windsor, who increased by 969 students during that same time period. Pages 7 and 8 contain the Connecticut map that I have shared at previous meetings. The map illustrates that South Windsor is an extreme outlier in comparison to the rest of the state. Page 9 may be of interest as it reveals that the town of South Windsor is not growing as fast as the school district. It's logical to think if a community has the fastest growing school district, they might also have the fastest growing town. However, the Department of Public Health estimates that since 2015, there are 25 other Connecticut towns that grew faster than the town of South Windsor. Our school district's disproportionate growth in comparison to the town's growth is important to consider when analyzing resource allocation. Between 2015 and 2024, South Windsor schools increased by 23.3%. The Department of Public Health estimates that the town overall grew by 3.82% between 2015 and 2023. This reveals that student growth is disproportionate to the town's growth and that this has important economic implications for our community. And while it should be noted that the Department of Public Health's population data points are very rough estimates, the overall premise that the town's growth is driven almost exclusively by students is grounded in data. And it makes sense when you think about it and when you look at real estate sales and learn why people are moving to South Windsor. On page 10 is a graphic that speaks to this dynamic. I have used this graphic to help illustrate the relationship between tax revenue and education expenses, but I won't go into this further as I know this commission is keenly aware of that dynamic. Lastly, on pages 11 and 12, I want to draw your attention to my deep concern over the impact enrollment is having on our operating budgets. As you can see on page 11, the Board of Education's percentage of the town's overall budget is 62.28%. The average for all Derby towns, or school districts, is 63.44%. This demonstrates that South Windsor Schools' portion of town funds is consistent with, if not slightly below, other towns. Yet our growth demands higher increases in our operating budget. And page 12 says it all. 154 school districts spend more per pupil, and only 10 school districts spend less. In other words, 93% of school districts in the state of Connecticut spend more per pupil than South Windsor. Clearly, we do not have a spending problem, we have an enrollment problem. In closing, people tend to focus on the impact enrollment is having on our facilities, and for good reason. But this concern is rivaled, perhaps even at this moment outweighed, by my concern over inadequate operating budgets. I hope this update is helpful, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
So I'm going to go ahead and chair this meeting like we would normally chair a meeting. So Michelle, do you have any comments or thoughts? No? In that case, I'm going to go around the table here and allow the commissioners to ask questions, make comments, what have you. So we'll start with Commissioner Karishi.
I'm still thinking through what I want to ask, but from your perspective, what do you think the town needs to do to help you, on your side of the fence then?
It's not an easy question to answer because I'm fully aware of the impact. I just spoke pretty significantly about my concerns about funding the operational budget adequately, but I'm fully aware that in doing so, it will raise taxes, and that is obviously a concern for many of our taxpayers in town. I do think that it's important that when we have the opportunity to keep pace with enrollment in our budgets, that we do so, which will smooth things out. Last year, our budget ended up becoming artificially suppressed after reductions and cuts, and this year you will see the boomerang effect of that. So one thing the town can do is to try to make a commitment to be as smooth with the operating budget as possible so that you don't have spikes going from one election cycle to the next. And in terms of facilities, we are plateaued at K-5, so we're full. We are full. But the good news is that we're not seeing an increase from today for K-5. I would like to see a little bit more of a decrease in the projections to create a little bit more comfort, but we are plateaued at K-5. TE, as I mentioned, is expected to get, I think it was another 142 students. It's not been easy, and we've had to make significant investments to create the space needed at TE. We believe from a facility standpoint that we will likely make it without any big investment or portables or things like that. What it will mean, which will not be well received by parents and kids, is that we will have large class sizes. So our class sizes will be large. We'll have maxed out that building. We've already done many things to change that building, including expanding the cafeteria. But we were fortunate to have federal dollars, and we put about $1 million into making that cafeteria bigger, which is actually a great segue for the high school. So the high school has become, I had hoped we would be able to manage it, but it's becoming clear to us that that's really gonna be a problem. Particularly, the cafeteria would be a great example. We cannot fit the number of students that we have now. They're eating in hallways or classrooms or places that aren't cafeterias. And so if we're going to get almost another 400 students, certainly that cafeteria is not going to work. It doesn't work today, and it hasn't worked. So that's an area that if we were to invest in the current high school to make accommodations, the cafeteria will need to be enlarged. That would be a significant expense. It's likely that we would, well, let me put it this way. You know, per the board, I am exploring what all the options are, right? So I'm not promoting any one option tonight. I'm not making any recommendations. So we are looking at what would a brick and mortar addition look like? How much would that cost? Where could it go? As you know, our land is very tight at the high school. And so between something as temporary, if you want to call it that, as portables, versus a larger brick and mortar addition, certainly expansion of the cafeteria would be required. And then from there, it would be the will of our town leaders and the Board of Ed to decide if we would make further investments in that building. Because if we were going to add an addition, there certainly are things that we could do to improve that high school, perhaps revamping the auditorium, which could use that. Our classrooms at the high school, the one thing that can't change when you do an addition is you won't be able to change the footprint. And the hallways are very narrow, and if you're there during passing time, you would have a hard time believing we're gonna add another 400 kids to those hallways. So I really don't wanna start a rumor that this is gonna happen, but of course I knew I would be asked, well, what would a new high school cost? So we are costing that out and researching everything from portables to additions to what would be involved with a brand new high school. So I'm not making any recommendations on that, but I am doing the research on all of those scenarios for the high school. Whatever we decide to do, we will not have the luxury to sort of admire a problem. We will have to make decisions quickly and move because those kids are coming. This is not something for a 10-year plan. This is something that we'll have to make decisions on, make the best decisions we can for the community and for the high school, and then move from there.
Commissioner Welch?
It has been stated by the fellow council members that they have been thrown off by projections in the past. I'm curious as to what differences between this projection and past projections that give you more certainty.
So I don't have them in front of me, but in recent years, the projections have been right on target. I mean, they're off a few kids here or there. What people are referring to really is what happened way back in 2016, where after a decade of declining, like most towns, South Windsor was just like all the other parts of the state, declining for 10 years. People forget this, and I understand why, but they often think the 10-year plan, which built us 4 new elementaries, was in response to increasing enrollment. It's actually not true. That was a plan in response to decreasing enrollment because there was pressure put upon me to close a school. And so that plan went from 5 elementaries to 4, and we built 4 new elementaries and redistricted the community at the time that was Wapping Elementary School. As that plan was adopted in 2013, by 2016, we started to see this change, and a very rapid and dramatic change in the enrollment. And a lot of people have been critical or wanted me to discredit the demographers. I'm not here to apologize for them, but I will just say there was no other town in the state that would have showed that trend. There was no reason for them to say, gee, we think you're gonna add 969 kids while no one else will be doing that. There was really no rationale at all for them to come up with that conclusion, and quite frankly, had they, I think people would have dismissed it. We are such an outlier, and we have performed so differently than the rest of the state that we've really become a conversation statewide. I mean, people talk about the South Windsor dynamic all of the time. If I have a meeting with superintendent colleagues about what are you doing about increasing enrollment, I can assure you I'm alone at that meeting and feeling pretty lonely because that's not the problems that my colleagues are facing in most districts. There are now some communities that are starting to grow, but none have been growing at the consecutive year. So we've been growing now for a decade, and there is no evidence of a town having that many consecutive years. And I think that's one of the pieces that I've been trying to get across when we're having conversations around the operating budget, which is people want to take the growth by year and apply it to the budget and then just keep moving forward. It's the cumulative effect of increasing enrollment over a long period of time which is driving up costs for our school district. It doesn't happen in just 1 year. There's a lag time between the cost of increasing enrollment and then before you start to really feel it. So, for example, if you had class sizes, I'm making this up, these are not actual real numbers for South Windsor, but if we had class sizes of 18 at the time when we were at low enrollment, and then we started to add kids, well, across, in a school, across 6 classrooms, you add 2, now you're at 20. You add another 2, now you're at 22. So far, you haven't needed to add any new staff. But as that enrollment increases, it's sort of like a sponge that can't absorb any more water. You get to the point where you're saturated, and now it is triggering hiring more teachers, but people are feeling like, I'm surprised it didn't happen earlier. But that's because we hadn't saturated our classrooms at maximum class sizes for the first few years of enrollment growth.
Anything else?
That is all. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Abramson.
Kate, I just want to say that I'm very impressed with how your administration has handled the growth without proportionate increases in funding, and yet you've maintained the high standards of all the schools. It's very impressive. But now I'm looking at the high school and the growth that's coming, and I'm thinking, obviously going to need a lot more teachers in the high school, and they're going to be hard to find and expensive. Is there a plan?
There's a plan, but there may not be funding behind the plan. So one of the things that we've tried to do over the last several years is anticipate what we know would not be helpful to taxpayers is to just pick a year and say, hey, we need 40 new high school teachers. I mean, that would just blow taxes out of the water. So we've been trying to layer in the teachers so that it's not felt in one budget cycle, because we know we're going to need them, and we add them where the needs are. So we look at which department is maybe getting the most maxed out, then we add one there. The following year, a different department. Last year, most of the staffing requests that the principals put forward, most of them did not make the budget. This year, I think the ask was for 4 teachers in 4 different content areas for the budget. And because I'm a realist, I understand what number I'm going to be coming in at, and it won't be a number that people are going to love, but it's just the facts and the truth of what it's going to take to run our schools. And so already, for example, and I guess I'm previewing the budget for at least one board member here tonight, and council member, mayor, you know, the ask for these 4, it would be smart to have them move forward in this budget, but the one I'm putting forward will have 1. So we are prolonging, I guess, the impact of this, but eventually these positions have to be there.
Is that it? Commissioner Foley?
And I'd also like to say thank you for doing a fantastic job that you're doing. These projections, Dr. Carter, are these projections based on, as meeting with Michelle, that they're including the approved apartments and whatnot that are online to be developed?
Yes, so our demographer works closely with Michelle's office and is made aware of what's been approved, so he factors those in, but it wouldn't factor in things that either haven't been approved or aren't on the radar right now.
Okay. And then also, as you have meetings with other superintendents, and everybody knows about South Windsor, right? It's the South Windsor effect. At the state, I'll put state capital level, are they aware of our outlier situation? And, you know, we all, we understand this, the new 8-30G, which has people in fear of, if you don't meet it, what's gonna happen to us, all right? We are an outlier, and has there been any conversations as far as our representatives trying to help you or help our community, because we can't take any more growth? Has there been any dialogue?
Yes, and I'll share that recently I met with a state representative who is the co-chair of the Education Committee, and I met with her to just share our situation, mostly to discuss my concerns around funding for the high school from a facility standpoint, not from an operating budget standpoint. And I have to say, she was very receptive. Like everyone who, when I sit down and show them our data, I mean, I've met with other state leaders and they literally gasp when they see our numbers and how different we are. And it is, and many of them see this as a great story, that they love to see a town that's thriving. They want to highlight South Windsor, you know, and we used to say it was a good problem to have, and I say, unless you're the person in charge of solving that problem. And she was very, so engaged and wanting to be so helpful, and really saw that this is a true and unique problem, and I believe that she will be very helpful. And to your question about the delegation, we do have a meeting planned with our delegation to meet with other state leaders to say, is there something unique that could happen for South Windsor, because we're such an outlier, and clearly we don't have the luxury of time. We need to move and respond to the changing enrollment. So whenever I've talked with someone at the state level, they are highly engaged, they are very surprised, and many of them see it as a great story to tell. And like I say, it sounds great, unless you're here trying to figure it out, but it is a great story. I mean, it's wonderful that the reason we have this problem is because families are flocking to South Windsor for the schools. I mean, you've all been in other meetings. That's what they tell us. This is what everybody reports out. So it's wonderful, but it's presented challenges.
That's all I have. Thank you again.
Commissioner Lopez.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Carter, for the update. Just have one question. Regardless of the numbers, your department has tools and approaches to any fluctuations, right? Whether it goes up or it goes down. What are the things that cannot be done in the event that these numbers grow like very surprisingly?
When you say what things can't be done, do you mean like programs in the schools, or?
Yeah, programs in the school, but you were mentioning things that may happen to the structure.
Okay.
To accommodate growth. But what are there other things besides that, like programs?
So, last year, we had very candid and frank discussions around the degree to which the Board of Education's proposed budget was cut, and it was pretty significant. And what I said this very publicly and very clearly last year. Last year, we made a choice to use reserve funds to mitigate the cut. But I was very clear that I was saying that's a fiscally irresponsible approach. But if my choice is getting rid of programs and hurting kids or using those reserves, because we had them, my recommendation was to use the reserves even though I was making everybody clear that this is not a sustainable solution. You can't keep dipping back into reserves. And so now this year, when we present the budget, which will certainly be higher than last year's budget, because I explained that it would have to be, when you suppress it in one year, it's gonna bounce back the next, that I am very, concerned that those sort of what I'll call rainy day funds, if you use them when it's not raining that hard, it's really a problem when it starts pouring. And I think we could have used fewer of those last year so that we'd have more available to us this year. I don't know where the budget's going to land, but I do know that the budget I'm presenting, despite it'll be viewed as a high percentage increase, it is, you'll see, when people see what's not in it, they'll see that it's pretty much bare bones. Nothing, there'll be no improvements. And if it does get cut dramatically, then now we are at the point where we have to look at our unmandated programs, which there's not many because most of what we do is required. But we're not required to have STEM at the elementary level as a special, and we do. And it's probably some of our students and families' favorite thing that we do at K-5. But that's a program that could go away. The world language program at the elementary level, not mandated. Again, families and kids would be devastated, and taking away something that's really smart for future, our future leaders and citizens. So those are the kinds of programs. And I have said many, many times, I've been doing this for 16 years. No one's ever heard me say, we're gonna get rid of sports, we're gonna get rid of music, just to fill a room, just to get support for the budget. And what I said last year is, if you hear me talking about sports or music, it's because it's real. And we have to see what will happen this year, but I am worried that those are the kinds of topics that are gonna come up.
Thank you. Thanks. I do have another question, but I think there can be another opportunity to discuss the numbers themselves, because I wanted to know, these numbers are based on experience, history, but there must be some econometrics items in here, and I want to know what those may have been. Yeah, but that would be for another.
I didn't quite understand.
Is that something that you want to discuss amongst us?
Well, you had mentioned that the company that did this
Yeah.
may be able to answer some questions.
We can reach out to them. Maybe if you provide specific questions, we can forward those to the demographer.
And Commissioner Member Lopez, if you haven't seen it, there is a video of the meeting where they just presented in November, and that packet that you got that was very rich with data and had lots of metrics and lots of sort of scientific equations. He goes through that presentation at the Board of Education's meeting in November, which is posted online. And you'd be able to watch that, and you would see him go through all of those pages and all of those details, which is far more detailed, more about the actual projection.
Yep.
I'm here more to talk about the impact of the projections.
Thank you.
You could fire that up and bring your popcorn. Commissioner Dexter.
Well, that may put a kibosh on my first question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I know Michelle mentioned that you had talked together about the developments that are already approved, and that was factored in by the demographers in their projections. Do you know what factor or percent housing turnover is used in these numbers?
I believe, I don't have it in front of me. I believe he does speak to that, and they do their research, so I think that is in there. I mean, the deep dive they do into South Windsor, I mean, they know everything. They know how many women in town are of childbearing years. I mean, this is the stuff that they figure out. So I assume that that is factored in. To what degree, I couldn't speak to at this
Okay.
point.
Would it be in the big packet if I look closer?
Yeah, it would probably be in the big packet.
Okay.
And he certainly could speak to that as well.
And then just the second question, probably an obvious one. And after successfully implementing your 10-year plan, this is probably not too difficult. At the high school, in 7 short years, you hit your peak. Okay. So I'm going to imagine that you're working on language and numbers and so forth for a referendum. And is that 2 years out, 3 years out, 1 year out?
I will say, well, so to answer your first statement, yes. So my charge right now is to start figuring out what are the options for the high school. So we are looking to gather data. We have been talking with professionals who do this work, who do space studies and feasibility studies for the high school. And, honestly, I'm not saying it anymore because there could be factors that might make this more attractive, but for a long time, people would say to me, well, aren't you just going to be recommending to build a new high school? And I would often say, no, because, not that it wouldn't be wonderful and great to have a new high school, but I've always felt that a new high school was just a bridge too far for this community after having already said yes to the elementary schools. Right. However, I don't want to get too far down this path, but because of our unique situation, what I am actively researching right now is, would South Windsor qualify for significant state assistance in creating something, whether it's an addition or a brand new high school. So I'm actively pursuing that, and I can't say that will come to fruition. What I can say is that no other town could make the argument that we're making. Right. And I do feel that if there's a will at the state level, that there may be some funds coming from the state that would make me speak differently about the prospect of a new high school. And so I'm really worried that now everyone's on Facebook saying Dr. Carter said she's building a new high school, but it's what I thought was not something that we should even consider is now something I'm actively researching so that the decision makers will have all the information and they can see from portables to additions to a new high school, what is the span, and if the state, honestly, most of the meetings I have, I think they sort of just feel sorry for me. I think it's out of pity that they take an interest in figuring out if they can help us. So that is something that, like as I said, that we'd be working with our delegation to connect with other state leaders to see if there's something that could be done for South Windsor. And that's not such a unheard of notion. I mean, there are towns who do get legislative notwithstanding language that helps them in situations. And towns that I would argue have far less compelling problems than we have. So, this is what we're researching right now, but it would be too soon to say, sure, what would we recommend and when would that possibly be a question for the community? What I can say is that it won't be 10 years from now because, the problem will have been here.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Kupchonis?
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Carter, for coming in and going through all this. I think all my questions have been answered, though. So, thank you.
Commissioner Viteri?
Dr. Carter, as was said by others, I want to thank you for the great job that you're doing and recognize that you're part of the problem. If you weren't making such a good system out of it, we would not be having so many people wanting to move in. I know that, as seniors like me begin to move and sell, you're going to keep getting more and more to replace what's going in there. I'm sure all these estimates are very well thought out and everything, but it just seems like that challenge is going to continue to be on going forward. And curious, in the middle school, is the same sense of crowding that's going on in the high school?
No, we feel we're in better shape at TE than we will be at the high school. For a variety of reasons, including and again, large class sizes aren't ideal, but physically we can accommodate more kids in the actual classrooms that are there. And we've made that investment in the cafeteria, which is a significant change. We created 4 classrooms. There were two major wide hallways, and we broke those down and made classrooms on the first floor and the second floor to gain us back classrooms. We had been using a good number of classrooms for the preschool program that has now since moved to Pleasant Valley School as its permanent location. So it won't be ideal, but it will, we believe it will work, and we're hoping without additional, like, something significant, like millions of dollars of portables. That's not what we're envisioning. You know, could numbers change? Could facts change? Of course, but we believe K-8, we're gonna be okay. The high school is just another, it's a whole other problem. And again, it's not that the footprint of the high school is not ideal. The size, the sheer size of the classrooms is, if you ever visited a high school classroom, those kids are packed in there. There isn't room to just make class sizes bigger. What we are doing right now, which will be very burdensome on kids and teachers, but of course we're trying to exhaust every low-cost option we can come up with. And so we're looking at the schedule and how to maximize the schedule. And are there ways that we can schedule classes that will maximize the use of classrooms? We are looking at what happens when teachers don't have their own room. Not ideal when teachers don't have their own room. It's not good for teachers and it's not good for kids. But it can happen. And we are looking at what happens when we maximize the number of teachers who do not have their own classroom and are just constantly moving so that we're getting a high utilization rate of every teaching space that we have in that building. So typically in a normal high school, a teacher has a classroom, and when it's their plan period, they're in their room planning, doing their job, or they're on the phone with parents, or they're, you know, whatever they need to do. Now that teacher becomes displaced, we find some place for them to do their work, and somebody else comes in and teaches their class in that classroom. And that's already happening, but I think it's gonna have to happen on a much more massive scale. So we are examining that. We're leaving no stone unturned in terms of all the potential solutions, even the ones that are not great, but they may have to happen. But we're going from what can we do with our own internal moves versus what then really forces us to do like an addition.
Bless you for having to go through all that. And I only ask because many years ago when I was growing up, our high school had become so overpopulated that they wound up changing the middle school to a junior high school and moved part of a grade 9 into the junior high school, and then gave the high school a chance to grow and everything. But it doesn't sound like we would have that kind of an opportunity here. So that was my only thought. But otherwise, thank you very much.
So Dr. Carter, I want to bring it back to some of the comments I made in my opening. We're a land use commission, and what I'm trying to do is kind of square the circle between this issue of development and the school population, the school enrollment challenge, let's say. So I didn't have a chance to go through your deck prior to this meeting, but I did go through the larger one that we got last time. And what I try and do is just find nuggets, things that might provide me with some insights as to what, you know, how to address, how to look at this situation. So some of the things I see is the new to district student trend is down, according to this. Enrollment projections were actually above actuals, so kind of the opposite of, you know, the situation that we had complained about. Or maybe another way to put it is better alignment between projections and actuals. Newly admitted kindergarten student trend down, and I understand there's a idiosyncrasy about when kids can start kindergarten. And the projection is slight increases over the next 4 years, followed by slight reductions overall. I mean, that's kind of the thesis, I guess, of both of these. So we have been, and this has been said many times, we've been very aggressively protecting you, protecting the schools in how we deal with developers and those who want to build things that are going to put kids in the classroom. So, we've spent a lot of time with developers and age-restricted type of developments, which protects you to some degree. But as I said earlier, that is not sustainable. At the same time, a meeting or two ago, we were talking to some folks who were looking at inexpensive housing so that young people, people in their 20s and 30s could find ways to buy houses, to buy housing in South Windsor, which I think we need to pursue that very strongly. So if you were us, how would you look, and I understand this isn't black and white, but if you were us, how would you look at the challenge between protecting the school system and looking at developers that want to build the types of housing that will add kids to the system?
I think that's why you guys are up there and I'm sitting down here. Obviously I hear that push and pull, right? I guess I would say with the right level of funding, the schools, I appreciate your phrase protecting, but what we really need is funding. And so if the funding was there to expand facilities, to maintain operating budgets, then we can grow as this commission feels the town should. The constraint for us is just the facilities that we have right now, and the funding to maintain just current levels of service. We haven't even talked as a board in years about new programs and investments and improvements. That's not even on the table anymore. We're just trying to keep up with enrollment and make sure that what we're currently offering kids and families, that we continue to offer that level of service. And so I hate to make it that simple, but unfortunately, we're not in a state where if a developer wanted to come in and build a huge development and you are able to say, great, it needs to come with an elementary school, okay, we'd respond, we'd figure it out. But that's the push and pull, is that our facilities are strained right now. And there just has to be a will in the community to pay for the kids we have, let alone the kids that are coming. So, you kind of put it on me. I guess I could put it back on you and say you could advocate for the funding that we need, so that whatever decisions you make, we can be nimble and respond to them. But the only way we can be nimble is it all comes down to money. I hate to say it, but that's really what it is. You could always build more schools if there was a will in the community to do so. I will say that simplifies it a little, because a large apartment complex could be built much faster than a new elementary school. Building school construction I've done it for 10 years, and the state it's not an easy and fast process. So the pacing would matter too. Even if all the money in the world suddenly showed up and everybody was on board, let's build more schools, we would have to be able to do that quick enough before the influx of kids that would come with those new developments in apartment complexes. Obviously, as an educator and a person whose job it is to welcome families to our schools, I'm an unlikely face of being someone that would push against housing. That's just not in the nature of what a school superintendent is. But I'm also a realist, and my job is to keep over 5,100 kids safe and dry every day and away from the elements and the roof over their head. And we just have a really unique challenge. And the reason why I keep stressing that is because unless you really understand the degree to which we're an outlier, I would think other people would be thinking, well, other school districts are figuring it out, what's so hard? We're that unique that this is a really unexpected problem. The demographers, nobody could have thought in 2016 that we'd be having this presentation tonight. And I will mention, just even though it hasn't been brought up, but I know it does get said sometimes, the new schools, that plan was based on declining enrollment. And so when people say, oh, you built the schools too small, we hear that. The schools were built to the maximum size allowable based on our enrollment projections at the time. And really, Pleasant Valley was the only school that was designed that could contemplate our dynamic. And even that school, you might have heard, maxed out. So it's really, it was just, the timing is fascinating. You know, come up with a 10-year plan to address declining enrollment. Oh, and then become the only community in the state that just skyrockets at a pace that no one else is pacing at. So it's just we're lucky to be unique, and it does present challenges that you're not going to see other communities grappling with in the same way.
Last question. So I know over the past 6
And during construction, which for those of you who know anything about construction, especially school construction, knows how challenging this is, we added 5 classrooms, 3 and 2 across those 2 schools in phase 2. On top of the 3 that we added at PRS in the middle of construction to respond to the changes we were seeing, even after the school was built, we had to add 2 portables onto that school, brand new school. Now, if you go and see it from an exterior standpoint, it's in the back, it looks fine. It doesn't look like, people picture portables, and aesthetically it looks fine, but it's not ideal, obviously. It's not what we had planned. So there are portables there. There are no other portables on any of our other new elementary schools, but Eli Terry did get 2 added in the middle of construction.
And is that a solution for the middle and or the high school?
We're hoping it's a solution that won't be needed at the middle school, but if the middle school did need, if it turns out we just ran out of classrooms, we would likely recommend that for the middle school, because it would be hopefully more of a temporary problem. For the high school, it's possible, more likely if the decision was made to invest in that building versus new, more likely it would be a brick and mortar permanent addition, just because of, you can't build up the way that it was constructed, you can't build up, so we have to build out. And if you know that it's very landlocked, many of you know we don't have adequate fields for our athletes, we don't have enough. It's not just a quality issue, it's a quantity issue. So there are some constraints with the current footprint of the high school, but that is what we have architects and professionals looking at. Where could an addition go? How many classrooms could we possibly add? What happens to parking? Because parking is very tight at the high school as well, and so if we do any additions, is that going to displace parking, and how would we manage that? So we're looking at a bunch of hypotheticals, but they're not at the point where they're even ready to be presenting to the Board of Ed. This is early stages, but we're on it, and we're working on it for sure. And we've got project professionals working on this, but we're not at a point now where I could say what the likely recommendation would be.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions, comments, please?
Comment, on page 12, looking at that just blows my mind that, and again, this has nothing to do with planning and zoning, but just as a taxpayer and as a parent and, future grandchildren and whatnot, I look at I don't want to be anywhere close to these 10 schools that are listed. I think we're better than that, and I think we have to definitely support Dr. Carter, and to have 154 school districts spend more money per pupil than the town of South Windsor, that's just not right. I think we owe her more than that, so that's as a.
I appreciate that, Commission Member Foley, and I will say, part of the reason why I share that data is not just to make the obvious point that you've just identified, but I'm trying to also show that for those who think the school system can just find efficiencies and tighten their belts and they can get through it, efficiencies is not a realistic solution for a district where only 10 towns spend less per pupil. This is basically your per pupil expenditure is an efficiency number. And many people are very proud of the fact that you could argue I mean, it's been said that we have the greatest return on investment. I haven't said that. I've had other people say that who've looked at our outcomes versus what we spend. Yes, there are districts that get better outcomes than we do, but they spend a lot more. There are districts who spend more than we do and don't get our outcomes. And so what this is really, I hope, explaining to decision makers is that this isn't just, oh, if we just were a little bit more efficient, we could get through this. That's just not realistic, and it's not a thoughtful way to plan when you look at this data.
Anything else, commissioners? We're good? Dr. Carter, I want to echo the comments that the commissioners made about thanking you and appreciating your hard work and your time coming here today. It is really, really appreciated. You're free to stay if you have a passion to hear about dry hydrants.
Well, I do put out a lot of fires, but I am not that passionate about that topic, so I will exit. And I just want to say I appreciate the praise that I received tonight, but I really want to redirect that to the teachers, the custodians, the school office personnel, the people on the ground in the buildings right now. If you knew what they were doing to make this work, as you've said, we've kind of hidden. I think sometimes when you do a good job, you kind of hide the problem. Well, the credit lies in the staff that are in the buildings every day finding ways to make this work. And so I will definitely pass this feeling on to our teachers and our custodians and our facilities folks and our maintainers and our IT department, who has worked crazy over the years. So there's so many folks that really deserve thanks for figuring this out in a way at as little cost as we've been able to do so far. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
You're welcome to come to the budget meeting because you've been well-versed in it now.
That's how we can help, okay. All right, moving on. We have a referral to consider, and I'd like to introduce Vincent Stetson, our Director of Public Works, to talk to us about a dry hydrant opportunity. I saw you present this to the town council, so I have some idea what we're talking about, but the other commissioners may not have any idea. So Vincent, take it from the top. Introduce yourself and we'll go from there.
Good evening, commissioners, and thank you for performing your civic duties for the town of South Windsor. In July, there was a fire on Niederwerfer Road for Burke Farm.
Can you get closer to the mic for me?
Yes, absolutely.
You're tall.
In July, there was a fire on Niederwerfer Road at Burke Farm. It's a historic farm building, been in town for a couple centuries. It was a total loss, and in response to that, the town council asked us to research options to have supplemental fire suppression services on Niederwerfer Road. We looked at a couple different options, installing a water main, installing a cistern, underground, above ground. And the cheapest, most simplified approach to this would be a dry hydrant tied into a pond. Historically, in the 1950s, across the street from Burke Farm, there was an irrigation pond. The indentation still exists there. The spoil pile, mound of dirt from digging out the pond is still there. And it is my assumption that it would be a very easy lift to cut the trees down, reestablish the pond, and install a dry hydrant. There is a small legal hurdle that has come to light. The funding source for this project, or not this project, but the purchase of the Pudum property that the pond would be on back in the 1970s was through a urban grant. We're currently working with DEEP and their property acquisition group to go over that very small hurdle. Since the time that this purchase has happened, I believe the town has purchased thousands of acres for open space to offset this little impact, because the understanding is if we were to take any land from this property, we would have to either pay back the loan or buy open space elsewhere in town. And we're talking very small footprint, maybe the size of this room. So it wouldn't be very expensive if they asked us to do this, but I'm getting the sense that they were willing to work with us. Seeing that this looks like it's going to come to fruition, We're going to plan on putting in kind of a perk test in the area to determine what the water level is, just to kind of science out how big we need to make this pond. I think that about covers it.
Okay. Michelle, do you have any comment?
Yeah, just a brief comment. I did, especially for our newer commissioners, I did include in your packet the 824 law, the Connecticut State Statute law, the reason you have this in front of you tonight. So this is being referred to by the town council for your consideration. What happens is you forward back to the council either a favorable recommendation, a not favorable, or neutral recommendation, or any kind of comments. And then the town council, in order to proceed, would have to, if you for some reason didn't agree with this and you said, no, we don't think this should go forward, they would have to have a supermajority vote to move it forward. So that is the impact of your comments back to them. It's not, you're not approving anything, you're just basically reviewing the recommendation and offering your comments back to them.
So when we do that, is that referral up or down provided by all commissioners or just seated commissioners?
It should be by your regular members.
Regular members?
Whoever is seated to act tonight, right? If you don't have a regular member, you'd be seating somebody, but I think all your regular members are here, correct?
All the regular members are here. So before we do that, I'd like to give the commissioners a chance to ask questions. So why don't we start with Commissioner Viteri?
No questions on my part.
Can we throw some fish in there? Fishing? Let a fishing pond in down? Just kidding.
Can you basically explain what the range is of use once this is up and running? Like how far up Niederwoofer in both directions it would service? A mile, I mean, is it the whole street?
Yeah, I don't believe the intent is for this to, service, all the way down Niederwurfer Road into the other town. In the event of emergency, I know that the fire department would utilize any resource that is at their option, and I can't really speak to the abilities of the fire department to pump and how far it would be. This would just provide them with an additional amount of water in a local area to help suppress fires.
And I'm going to be ignorant now, but even if they couldn't pump directly from the dry hydrant through their hoses to a fire, they can pump into a tanker?
Correct.
And use it that way, and drive all the way down wherever?
Yep.
Okay, so it's just water available for whatever?
It's
that fair?
specifically for firefighting, yes.
Of course, yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick question, and I don't know much about ponds, but this pond, it's, I guess it never dries up. It always has the right level of water.
So with the perk test, we try to science out how stable the water level will be. Mr. Burke, who is in the audience here, shared with me that he has a historic dry well right in his front yard. It's the classic stone all the way down to the water table. And he says it's consistently at about 6 feet. I'm assuming that if there was a irrigation pond there in the past, that it probably should stay full on its own. But we do have a plan to install a ancillary well to kind of keep it primed if necessary. It is my hope that nature can take care of it and we don't have to go to that level.
Thank you.
Commissioner Foley?
So, Vince, on the existing pond that's there, the irrigation pond, is that like clay lined, or is it just something that was excavated and bermed around until they got to the water table?
I have no way of knowing. We haven't broken ground there.
Okay, so you're gonna be doing the excavation?
Yeah, so the town would be kind of doing this all in-house to keep costs down.
Okay, that's all I have.
Commissioner Abramson?
Is the impetus for this a request from the fire department?
The fire department's stance on this issue is that, the fire on Near Warford Road in July was a unique event in that there was no amount of water that would have changed the outcome. But based upon the emotional aspect of all the other residents on Near Warford Road experiencing and witnessing a complete loss, it created a heightened sense of anxiety, which the town council would like to alleviate.
Okay. Was the town council's reluctance because the fire department wasn't really recommending this?
I'm not sure there's any reluctance.
Can you give me any insight into why the fire department didn't think this was a good idea? It's not going to solve Mr. Burke's farm problem, but they feel confident that with other structures that are 200 years old, that they would have been able to, put out a fire. But the fire department's stance is that, they will take any sort of help that they can, but it's not necessary. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Welsh.
I have no questions.
Commissioner Kirishi.
No questions or comments.
Any other questions, comments?
I just have a comment. I'm working in the insurance industry. I know that location or proximity to a hydrant reduces the premium of insurance, so this would be some relief for the people of the area.
I'm not sure if a dry hydrant equates to that, but potentially, yes.
I think the way I'd like to do this, Josh, is do a roll call of seated commissioners. And if you are predisposed to a positive referral, just say aye. If you're not, say nay.
Commissioner Kipchunos? Commissioner Dexter? Commissioner Lopez?
Aye.
Commissioner Foley?
Aye.
Commissioner Abrahamson?
I'm going to abstain because I
Okay, Commissioner Welch?
Aye.
Chair Bernstein?
Aye.
That is 6 ayes with 1 abstention.
We have a positive referral. Thank you, Mr. Stetson.
Thank you.
We have nothing else on the agenda.
Make a
So,
motion to adjourn.
second, so moved. Thank you.